All right, let's dive in. Today, we're tackling the history of humankind. We've got a great guide to help us unpack it all. Yuval Noah Harari's book, Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. Ready for some mind-blowing concepts?
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome. Hopefully by the end, we'll have a better grasp on our species' wild ride through time.
It's a journey that starts, well, let's just say a lot earlier than most people realize.
You're telling me Harari goes way, way back, 13.5 billion years ago to the Big Bang.
Wow.
I know, right? It's when matter and energy first popped up. Talk about perspective.
Yeah.
Then, of course, we've got Earth forming around 4.5 billion years ago. And eventually, boom, life. It's mind-boggling trying to wrap your head around those timescales.
It really is. Easy to forget when you're caught up in everyday stuff that our planet, the whole universe really, has this massive history stretching back eons.
Totally. And we, Homo sapiens, we're just the new kids on the block, relatively speaking.
Exactly, showing up around 200,000 years ago.
A blink of an eye in the grand scheme of things. And, it's tempting to think we're somehow above the animal kingdom.
Separate, special.
But Harari sets the record straight, right?
Oh, definitely. He reminds us we're part of the great ape family.
Cousins with the chimps.
Close cousins. In fact, get this, just 6 million years ago,
Okay.
one female ape had 2 daughters. One, she's the ancestor of all chimpanzees today.
Wow.
And the other, our great-great-great and many more greats' grandmother.
It's like, whoa, we're all connected.
Absolutely.
Speaking of connections, our brains, why are they so ginormous?
Right.
Way bigger than they need to be just to survive. And for like 2 million years, we weren't doing anything particularly impressive with them.
It's true. Harari brings up the gorging gene theory. Maybe our ancestors were genetically predisposed to eat.
When food was plentiful.
Right, so they could survive when things were lean.
Makes sense.
And all those extra calories could have helped our big brains develop and keep running.
So you're saying my late-night snacking is an ancient evolutionary trait?
Could be. Of course, there are probably other factors at play, too. Scientists are still debating exactly what led to such big brains.
It's a mystery. But eventually, those brains did start to do some pretty amazing things.
We got smarter. More complex language, abstract thought, the ability to believe in things that don't physically exist.
Things we can't see or touch.
Exactly. And a big one. The power to cooperate in huge numbers.
So you're saying imagination, our ability to tell stories and believe in things that aren't real, actually helped us thrive.
It's a bit counterintuitive, but think about it.
Okay.
Animals communicate about concrete things, danger, predator.
Right.
But sapiens could talk about stuff that wasn't right there in front of them.
Possibilities. What ifs?
We could weave narratives, imagine different scenarios, and even create shared beliefs that united us in a way no other animal could.
Like a superpower.
In a way, it was. Suddenly, we had this whole new level of communication and understanding.
And that's what let us organize on a larger scale than ever before.
We could build empires, create complex social structures, even invent things like money and nations.
Whoa.
These things only exist because we all agree they do.
It's like mind-blowing.
It is. Harari calls these shared beliefs, imagined realities, the foundation of human civilization as we know it.
Makes you think, what else in our world today is just an imagined reality? But before empires and all that, we were hunter-gatherers for a long time.
Oh, yeah. A lot longer than we've been farmers, for sure.
And it's easy to romanticize that period, right?
The noble savage living in harmony with nature.
But Harari challenges a lot of those assumptions.
He does. Forager societies weren't necessarily peaceful, and their lives were far more complex than we tend to imagine.
And let's not forget, they weren't exactly leaving nature untouched either.
Right. Harari calls it the human flood. As sapiens spread to new areas, megafauna, those giant animals, started disappearing.
Like extinct.
Gone. In Australia, around 45,000 years ago, you had creatures like the diprotodon, a wombat but the size of a rhino, and then the Geniornis, a flightless bird taller than a human, all gone.
But couldn't that have been just natural climate change?
Harari argues against that.
How so?
The extinctions happened right when sapiens arrived, and it was only land animals.
Interesting.
Ocean megafauna was mostly fine, and this same pattern happened wherever sapiens settled new areas like New Zealand, even on Wrangel Island.
Where the last woolly mammoths hung out.
Exactly, right when humans showed up.
So we were already messing with ecosystems way back then.
It seems so. Definitely makes you rethink that balance with nature idea.
It does. And then comes perhaps the most significant shift in human history, the one that really reshaped our relationship with the natural world.
The agricultural revolution.
The turning point. We went from nomadic hunter-gatherers to settled farmers.
Cultivating crops, domesticating
It
animals.
seems like such a massive leap, especially if, as you said, foragers had a decent life.
Why give that up for back-breaking farm labor?
Exactly. What was the motivation?
Well, Harari has this intriguing idea.
Oh.
He suggests wheat might have actually domesticated us, not the other way around.
That's wild.
It was gradual, he says. As we messed with the environment, we accidentally made things perfect for wheat to grow.
Makes sense.
Over time, we became more reliant on it, leading to settlements and eventually full-blown agriculture.
So it wasn't like, hey, let's become farmers. It was more like, oops, we're farmers now.
Pretty much. He gives the example of the Natufian culture.
Okay.
They were living in villages focused on wild cereals.
Before actual farming.
Yes. But wasn't agriculture a good thing, though? It led to civilization, cities.
Progress.
Well, not necessarily. For many, life as a farmer was harder, less secure, maybe even less healthy than foraging.
Really?
And it led to new concepts like private property and social hierarchies.
Which caused their own set of problems.
Exactly. Harari's point is, history isn't a straight line from bad to good.
Right, it's messy.
What we see as progress often has trade-offs, unforeseen consequences, and they weren't always positive for everyone.
It's a good reminder that even seemingly good changes in the past shaped the world in complex ways.
Absolutely.
And understanding that can help us approach today's challenges with, well, more nuance.
I agree, and one of the most profound consequences of agriculture, according to Harari, was the rise of what he calls imagined orders.
Imagined orders. Okay, I'm intrigued. Break that down for me.
Think of it like this. Large-scale societies, they're built on shared beliefs, myths, social hierarchies, things that only exist in our minds.
So not based in, like, physical reality.
Not inherently. They're these imagined orders that allow us to cooperate in huge numbers.
Fascinating.
But they're not based on some universal truth. A great example is Hammurabi's code from ancient Babylon.
Heard of it?
It literally defined the value of a human life based on their class and gender.
Wow.
That wasn't some natural law. It was a carefully constructed belief system.
So even ancient laws were based on ideas people agreed on, not some objective truth.
Exactly. Makes you think about our own world today.
What do we take for granted as real that's actually just an imagined order?
Right. Money, for example.
Has value because we all say it does.
Not because it's inherently valuable.
It's a trip. And nations. Totally made up lines on a map.
But with huge consequences.
It's mind-bending, but also super fascinating. And that power of shared beliefs, well, it only becomes more apparent when we look at the rise of empires.
Which we'll dive into next time.
Can't wait. We were in the thick of it last time talking about imagined orders and how they shape societies.
Powerful stuff, really.
It seems like the rise of empires took those imagined orders and really ran with them.
Oh, absolutely. Empires, with their huge territories and complex ways of governing.
They took it to a whole new level.
Definitely. It's easy to see empires as just bad guys, right?
All about conquest and violence.
But Harari says, hold on, it's not that simple.
There's more to the story.
He argues that empires, while often brutal, they also played a big part in shaping the world we know.
How so?
They spread ideas, technology, culture across huge distances.
Like a mixing pot.
In a way. Take the Roman Empire.
A classic example.
Brutal conquests, no doubt. But it left a lasting legacy.
We still see it today.
Legal systems, languages.
So it's not black and white. Empires were.
Complex.
Both destructive and creative.
And their legacies are something we're still dealing with today.
Makes you think. One thing that helped empires expand and control all that land.
Besides the obvious military power.
Was writing.
Oh, game changer right there. Before writing, everything had to be memorized.
Passed down orally.
It really limited how much information could be stored and shared.
Try to imagine a world without writing.
It's almost impossible. It's so fundamental to us now.
For communication, storing knowledge.
And with writing, you could create complex bureaucracies, write down laws.
Spread ideas across vast distances in time.
Harari points out, writing first popped up in ancient Sumer.
Mesopotamia.
And it started as a way to keep track of stuff.
Like what?
Grain shipments, taxes, those kinds of things.
So more about accounting than, like, epic poems.
Haha, exactly. Those early scribes, they weren't writing novels.
Just keeping track of stuff.
Amazing how something so practical ended up having such a huge impact on history.
Totally. And as writing evolved, it helped empires get even more powerful.
Without a doubt. They could manage larger populations, collect taxes more efficiently.
All thanks to better record keeping.
It makes you wonder, what if writing had never been invented?
Would empires even be possible?
It's a fascinating thought experiment. But moving on, Harari also talks about science and empire.
Two forces that seem pretty different.
On the surface, yes, but he argues they were deeply intertwined, especially with those European powers on the rise.
What do you mean?
European empires, they poured money into scientific research.
Not just for the love of knowledge?
They saw the practical benefits. Science led to advancements in warfare, medicine, navigation.
All things that help you build an empire.
Exactly. He uses the example of James Cook's voyages.
To the Pacific.
Voyages of discovery, sure, but also missions of expansion for the British Crown.
So science and empire, hand in hand.
They understood that knowledge was power, and they used it to expand their influence all over the globe.
It wasn't just those big expeditions either, right? You mentioned earlier that even small innovations played a role.
Oh, yeah. Think about something as simple as canned food.
Canned food.
It might seem mundane, but it allowed ships to stay at sea for much longer.
Without everyone getting scurvy.
Exactly. And speaking of scurvy, figuring out how to prevent it, that was huge.
I remember reading that it was a lack of vitamin C.
Right. Something we take for granted now, but back then it was a major killer of sailors.
So basically, eating oranges and lemons changed the course of history.
It's crazy, right? It allowed European ships to travel farther, stay out longer.
Giving them a big advantage in exploration, trade, everything.
It shows how even small scientific discoveries can have these massive ripple effects.
You never know where progress is going to come from. And at the same time, all this is happening. A new economic system is emerging.
Capitalism.
With its focus on growth, investment, profits.
It was a huge shift from earlier economic systems, really fueled a dynamic, expanding economy.
One that would eventually reshape the whole world.
It's a complex system, though.
How does Harari break it down?
He uses the analogy of a baker who wants to open a new shop.
Okay, I like where this is going.
She needs money, right?
Yeah.
So she takes out a loan from a bank.
Makes sense.
But here's the thing. The bank creates credit, lending out money it doesn't actually have.
Wait, what? How does that even work?
It's based on the belief that the baker will be successful and repay the loan with interest.
So it's all built on trust.
And this system of credit allows for economic expansion way beyond just the available capital.
So capitalism is fueled by this belief in the future, this expectation that things will keep growing, profits will be made.
You got it. And that belief can be incredibly powerful.
It drives innovation, investment, creates wealth.
But there's a flip side to that coin, too.
Oh, I bet there is. Sounds like it could easily lead to exploitation.
If there aren't safeguards in place, absolutely. Harari uses the example of the Dutch East India Company,
VOC.
a prime example of what can go wrong. They were essentially a state within a state,
Wow.
waging wars, conquering territories, amassing huge wealth.
A corporation with that much power. Scary.
And their actions had devastating consequences, especially in Indonesia.
They were exploiting resources and people.
It's a cautionary tale about how greed and the pursuit of profit can lead to terrible things.
It's like even the best systems can have unintended consequences.
And it's up to us to find ways to minimize those negative impacts.
The balance we're still trying to figure out today. So we got empires expanding, capitalism taking root, and then boom, another revolution.
Ooh, Industrial Revolution.
It changed everything about how we live and work.
It was all about energy, like you said earlier, with that jumping pot lid analogy.
Finally figured out how to harness the power of heat to create motion on a grand scale.
And it started with the steam engine, using coal to power factories, trains, ships.
It led to massive economic growth, cities exploding in size, new social classes emerging,
The world was changing at an incredible pace.
and not always for the better, right?
Some benefited much more than others. It's important to remember that
Even the most transformative innovations have their downsides.
it's crucial to understand those and try to mitigate the negative impacts.
It's like we're constantly trying to harness progress while also wrestling with its unintended consequences.
Well said. And alongside the Industrial Revolution, hand in hand with capitalism, came the rise of consumerism.
Ah, yes, consumerism.
The idea that happiness comes from buying stuff.
We're all pretty familiar with that these days.
For most of human history, people lived in a world of scarcity, survival mode.
But the Industrial Revolution and capitalism created a world of abundance.
At least for some.
And then you combine that abundance with clever marketing.
And suddenly you've got a culture obsessed with buying more and more.
Always chasing that next thing, that next dopamine hit.
Harari uses a pretty striking example to illustrate how absurd this consumerist mindset can be.
What's that?
Obesity.
In a world where people used to starve.
Now we have a problem with overeating, making ourselves sick.
And then we spend even more money to try and fix the problem.
Diet products, gym memberships, the irony.
It's like a double win for the system.
Consume to excess, then consume even more to try and undo the damage.
A fascinating paradox. It makes you wonder, is there another way? Can we be happy without all the buying?
That's a question a lot of people are wrestling with today, especially as we face challenges like climate change and inequality.
It's becoming clear that endless growth and rampant consumerism might not be sustainable.
So where do we go from here? What does the future hold for Homo sapiens? Well, that's what Harari dives into in the final part of his book.
And that's where things get really interesting. He argues that we're entering an era of intelligent design, where we're breaking free from the constraints of natural selection. Okay, so last time, things got pretty intense.
We were talking about humanity entering an era of intelligent design.
A huge shift, right? Like, where do we even begin with that?
Well, for most of history, life on Earth, it's evolved through natural selection.
Survival of the fittest.
But now, with tech like genetic engineering, we're kind of taking the reins.
Steering the process ourselves.
In a way.
It's a bit mind-blowing. We've already seen it with GMOs, genetically modified crops,
Making them resistant to pests.
increasing yields, even boosting nutrition.
It's pretty amazing what we can do.
It makes you wonder, what's next? What's on the horizon?
Well, Harari even talks about the possibility of bringing back extinct species.
Whoa, seriously?
Yeah. Scientists have mapped the woolly mammoth genome.
Like Jurassic Park style.
Kind of. There's serious talk about actually reviving them.
That's incredible. But also, kind of scary, right? Do we have the right to play God like that?
It's a big ethical question for sure, and it goes even further than just bringing back extinct animals.
Where else could this lead?
Harari suggests we might one day be able to engineer better humans.
Better humans. What does that even mean?
That's the debate, isn't it? Imagine eliminating genetic diseases,
That would be amazing.
enhancing cognitive abilities, maybe even extending lifespans through genetic manipulation.
Wow. It's both exciting and a little terrifying.
Like, what does it even mean to be human if we can design ourselves?
Exactly. And who decides what better even means?
These are huge questions society needs to grapple with, and soon.
These technologies are advancing so fast.
The choices we make now will have a massive impact on the future.
No pressure. And it's not just genetic engineering, right? Harari also talks about artificial intelligence.
AI, that's another game changer.
And merging our minds with machines.
It's like science fiction becoming reality.
There's that Human Brain Project, trying to create a complete simulation of the human brain in a computer.
If they pull it off, it could revolutionize how we understand consciousness and intelligence.
Imagine uploading our minds to computers.
Living forever in the digital realm.
Or connecting our brains directly to the internet. Instant access to all information.
The possibilities are mind-boggling, both exhilarating and a little unnerving.
Yeah, it challenges everything we think we know about being human.
About what it means to be conscious, about our own potential.
It's almost too much to take in. But looking back at our whole journey, it's clear humans love pushing boundaries.
We're always reinventing ourselves.
It's what makes the future so unpredictable, so exciting.
We're at this crossroads. The lines between human and machine are blurring.
Biological and artificial.
What does it all mean for Homo sapiens? Well, Harari doesn't give us a neat answer.
Crystal ball.
He says the biggest question now is not what we will become.
But what we want to become. We have this power to shape our own destiny, more than ever before.
But that power comes with huge responsibility.
We need wisdom, compassion, a deep understanding of our history.
Both the good and the bad.
Harari's book really drives home the point that we need to stay humble.
We're not the end-all, be-all of evolution.
And we're not the only ones who matter.
We're part of this interconnected web of life.
And we need to make choices that ensure a good future for everyone, not just ourselves. That's a powerful message, and it makes me think, history isn't just something that happened in the past.
It's still happening.
We're all part of it, shaping the world we'll leave behind.
Every choice we make contributes to that.
So as you go about your day, think about that long arc of human history. What resonates with you? What stands out? And what does it tell us about the future we're creating together? If you want to explore these ideas further, definitely check out Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. It's a book that will make you think, challenge your assumptions, and maybe even change how you see the world. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.